Welcome to the Springs Are Everywhere podcast, a production of SMI, the Spring Manufacturers Institute. I'm your host, Gary McCoy, Executive Director of SMI. This edition is all about training. We'll first talk with Rodney Poore, a longtime member of the spring industry who has dedicated many years to technical training. In our second segment, we'll chat with Raquel Chole, who also has decades of experience in the industry, primarily in sales, and she now dedicates her efforts in the area of leadership training and development. The Springs Are Everywhere podcast is brought to you in part by our platinum sponsor, Gibbs Interwire. It's my pleasure to welcome Rodney Poore to the Springs Are Everywhere podcast. Rod is a seasoned professional in CNC spring machine manufacturing and technical training with over 45 years of experience in the field. His journey has been driven by a passion for educating others and advancing manufacturing processes through a combination of technical expertise, client-focused service, and a commitment to continuous improvement. He's an adjunct professor at McHenry County College in the Chicago area, where he teaches courses that lay the foundation for future machinists and technicians that emphasize machine shop safety, technical skills, and quality assurance. In addition to this, he works in an engineering role at SMI member company Perfection Spring and Stamping in Mount Prospect. Rod, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me, Gary.
So, Rod, training employees in technical concepts is crucial for manufacturers, especially in the spring industry. If you ask a group of manufacturers to define what training is, chances are you're going to get a lot of different answers. And I just want to ask you, how would you define training, especially in the area of technical skills?
Yeah, very good question. What happens is, from a employee's point of view, what they feel to believe what's technical and what they want to see is different than from the company's perspective for technical training. So employees looking to get on board, and they're starting out fresh, and they have to come up to speed and know what they're going to be learning, and they need to show the foundation, and we write the foundation for them to be able to follow and be able to understand. And it's a guideline, step-by-step process that will teach the workers from knowing nothing, walking in, to walking out with some skill sets. And as far as a company goes, the company's wanting to reinforce their safety rules. They want to get their quality standards across. They want to get the troubleshooting and the different operations that are in place to be able to have the workers understand what they're doing. They also want to, just so that the workers understand the hows, but also the whys. Why are they doing this, and how come they have to do it, and all the paperwork and recording, the documentation that's required to meet the quality standards in today's world too. So being able to lay all this out and for both, and get the company to understand that sometimes we have to start fresh with the technical and teach people to come into this, and then having the employee want to be able to learn and build this skill set and be open-minded to be able to go into this type of trade.
So, Rod, what are types of things you're looking for from students who are new to the industry that can ensure that they have success?
So when I teach a class, I've had classes as small as 2 or 3 people, sometimes one-on-one. But what it is, when I have a class of 10 or 15 students, I can see right away there's some students, boy, they set up, they come prepared, they're ready to learn. And then I see other students that are just like, why do I have to be here? And when you see the difference in the workers of the ones that want to be there and want to learn, they are going to be your successful. Those are the ones that they're answering questions as quick as you could give the question. And I've actually stopped my classes sometimes and asked, some people, do you know this? Are you skilled? And they're like, no, this just comes natural to me. And being able to see that in these workers, it's a great thing that there's a lot of good talent coming up. I give a lot of credit to a lot of the schools have started to change to where now they're getting back into actually having some of this classes and some of the CNC machines actually in the high schools. So there's a change going on with the overall picture of what the high school students can do and have access to. So I've been in several high schools and walk in and see these CNC lathes and mills and having these students there and being able to get the hands on. It's great. But seeing these students that really come to class prepared, that's the ones that stand out the best.
Yeah, and I guess that begs the question, can you train anyone in maybe somebody who doesn't have as much of a technical background? How important is that?
To answer that, yes, I could train anyone, and I have trained a lot of people that had no skill sets. They come into class, and when I go start at the beginning and I go through a math process, it's simple math, but it's taking your simple fractions and converting to decimals and showing them how. And then, which they should have learned this in high school, of course. But what happens is once you explain how it's used in the workforce and why we're using it, then once they understand the decimals, then I bring out the micrometers and calipers. And I have some great PowerPoint presentations that I present to the class. It teaches them exactly how to use a micrometer step by step. And as soon as these students, all of a sudden, it's like that light bulb goes off. They're like, well, I get it. I see it. I understand it. And you could just see it in every student that learns this. They learn a lifelong trait, right? They learn something for life just at that given moment in a couple hours class and being able to do that. So starting out fresh like that and build these people up is the best. Yes, you could train somebody from the beginning, but if somebody has all the trait, they have these skills. Sure, it's a lot easier. It's a lot better. Going into different machine, they can start out maybe hands on the machine and be able to start to learn a little bit sooner, a little bit quicker. It's just, I would just say it's kind of a time gap between the two, getting up to speed, maybe, a few months versus, say, even a year versus somebody starting out fresh.
Yeah, and why does training need a solid foundation in order for students to succeed?
Well, yeah, we have to, and that's one thing I learned working with the college. Um, I've been over at MCC now working. They have several different divisions, and the one I'm working at now is the Talent Impact Center, where we go on site. So we have to have a solid foundation walking into somebody's company. If I'm asked to walk into a company and teach a class, I have no idea what I'm walking into. It could be 8 o'clock in the morning, and I'm walking in. I don't know how many what these students are, who they are, young, old, or combination. But so you have to have the materials and present the materials as such so that they can understand and follow along and learn. Then what that allows them to do is we give these materials to each student. So that allows them to go back and they can read and they can follow up at, because it's a 1 day class usually at a particular factory. So when that happens, we have to go back and reread things and follow up on it. And fortunately, I'm not there. Then they have to do it on their own, and or come. I always leave my classes with asking people if you're really interested in this, then follow up with the college or follow up somewhere where you can get some additional training. But having that skill set laid out is really important, like that.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the spring industry and why it's so important to have technical training, not only for new people that come to the company, but those who've been around for a long time.
Yeah. So what I've seen, I've been doing springs for 45 years, and I've seen it all the way from the beginning and all the changes over decades of different machinery. And as we went from the old mechanical machines into a combination of mechanical CNC, and now today it's mainly just all CNC type machines. And, so what happens, these companies will buy a machine and they can't buy a brand new machine every year. So they may have a good year where they went out and purchased one, two machines or something, and now they have the state of the art, but the clock is ticking from that point. So what happens is 2 or 3 years go by, and they're not up to speed of even the newest technology that comes out. We see it at all the CASME shows. I love going there and being able to see all the new machines and the new technology. And these companies or the employees, they're not keeping up with it. So they're just not being able to. So being able to go into a company, to be able to teach and be able to say, there's more advancement, there's better machines out there, there's this out there, and having the people understand that this is the way you have to keep up with the modern technology. It moves really fast. Technology is moving. So as a perfection spring and stamping, I work on some of the best machines, the Wafios. It's an FMU 16 plus with 21 servo motors, and this thing is it's high tech machines with video measuring cameras. It's got lasers. I got my web camera on my machine, so I can watch it from my desk or anywhere I need to be. And this type of technology is the newest state of the art type machines, and you have to be able to keep up the speed with it in order to learn and understand and go forward. And I can't wait to see what the next generation of machines will be. I hope I get to stick around and see it.
Yeah, I think that'll be the exciting part to see what's down the road.
Yeah.
Is it fair to say that a lot of companies now have employees, overseeing like 4 or 5 machines at the same time, whereas maybe before it was just one or two?
Yes, that's true. And so we do have to operate more machines, but with today's technology, my machine has video measuring cameras on there, and a lot of them, whether it's a camera or lasers or sensors, there's so much more that we can place on the machine so that they're being checked for every single part's being measured and checked. So now what that allows the operators to do is we can operate several more machines at one time, and we can we're monitoring the machine monitoring itself and keeping that up to speed.
So, Rod, I just wanted to close with I know that you developed a training course, I think it was about 10 years ago,
Yes,
Fundamentals of Spring Making Course
yes.
Design. Just tell me a little bit about that and why you decided to do that.
So I have a book, and it is on training for springs. So what I noticed was I started gathering all my materials. Gary, I spent like 20, 30 years. I just started accumulating training materials over the years just to show different people that I worked with over time that, hey, this is how you do this. And I had this training materials. Well, when I gathered up all this training materials, it came to me like, what do you do with it? So I'm like, let me put it together and try to make a book form and a book. So after many years of trying to come up with it and having the book and then adding to it and editing it and stuff, so now I have a pretty good book. And it starts out with the mechanical machines and single point coiling, but there's also a lot of other parts of it for quality and how other machines operate, grinders and things. So and then now I'm adding to the book is the newest, the CNC machines, and being able to add this in there so that somebody can pick up the book and be able to look through it and see how this technology has evolved from the beginning to now, in the last, say, 15, 20 years up to date, and see all the new technology.
Well, that's great. And Rod, I appreciate you coming on to join us today. So, how can people get a hold of you, and what kind of availability do you have for training?
So LinkedIn is the best way to get a hold of me. And
Okay.
I'm fortunate. David Kahn, president of Perfection Spring and Stamping, has allowed me to take Wednesdays off to work at the college. And I've been doing this now every Wednesday at MCC. And I'm work at MCC, to get it clear. I'm working. I wrote up my numbers at work. It's the fundamentals of numbers that start, and it leads into the basic measurement classes. Then it leads into blueprint reading classes. So this is the basic foundation that people need to know if they're going to start to get into any industry, whether it's springs or some other industry. They need to know how to use these micrometers and calipers and be able to confidently measure parts. So I do hands-on with every student. I bring in micrometers and calipers for each and every student, and we do hands-on measuring. If it's a company that's got parts, I actually incorporate the parts from that company and say, we're going to measure your parts. And we actually talk and discuss, and the blueprints come from that company, and we review their blueprints and go over the entire blueprints with the company. So all this is so important to be able to have. And I do that every Wednesday is what it's kind of set up right now. My demand is getting higher and higher because training is in high demand, and I'm getting calls all the time for people asking, hey, can you help us out? So I don't know where it's going to go, to be honest with you, but it's a lot of fun. I enjoy it.
Well, Rod, thank you for joining us today and best wishes. And yeah, folks, if you want to get some knowledge and information on training, get a hold of Rod, and we'll put your LinkedIn contact in the show notes.
Thanks, Gary. I appreciate it. And thank you for having me today.
As a longtime supporter of SMI's mission to inform the spring industry, Gibbs Interwire is proud to be the platinum sponsor of the Springs Are Everywhere podcast. For over 6 decades, Gibbs Interwire has provided high-quality spring wire and strip products in carbon, nickel, red metals, and stainless steel alloys, along with specialty items such as shaped wire, strand, cable, brush, and staple wire. With many locations throughout North America, our experienced team is available where and when you need us. Gibbs Interwire offers exceptional value to our customers by providing a vast inventory from the best suppliers worldwide. Gibbs Interwire is now offering high-performance alloy wire from Elgeloy Specialty Metals. For your quote today, call Gibbs Interwire at 800-800-4422 or visit gibbswire.com.
It's my pleasure to welcome Raquel Chole to the Springs Are Everywhere podcast. She is the president and CEO of Global Leadership Resources. It's a leadership development company, and Raquel's passion is involved in leadership development, and that comes first and foremost from her time in the spring industry. So for more than 20 years, she's worked at a global development at an automotive component maker that served all makes and models of cars. And in addition, she's been a regular contributor to Springs Magazine. So in my time as editor, we worked a lot together on projects. So Raquel, it's nice to welcome you to the podcast today.
Thanks, Gary.
Well, let's get started. I want to talk about leadership training. And Raquel, why is that so important, especially in the manufacturing space?
Well, when you think about what we do as metal formers and spring makers, we have responsibility for so much in the world. The whole world depends on us to make their cars go, to keep seatbelts buckled, to protect us in an accident with the headrest, to make the ice in our freezers for the ice machines, to be the spring in the recliner of our easy chair, to be the plate under our toilet. We have so much responsibility, and everyone down the line has to understand that responsibility, right? Because you're the guy making the spring that's going to keep someone's baby in the car in an accident. What if it's your grandbaby? What if it's your child, right? So you want to make sure that you are doing the things as a leader that's necessary to produce excellent parts with zero defects and to, well, we make everything run, don't we?
Yeah, and Raquel, what are some of the critical management skills that today's leadership professionals must possess?
I think that communication is the top of everything. If you can communicate well, it eliminates things like redos. It helps everyone get along better too. I think that another aspect is understanding customer focus in terms of internal customers and external customers, right? So if I make a spring and then I send it to the heating department, I want it to arrive in a way that I would like to receive it. If I send a pallet of parts to the finishing department, I want them to come in a way that will please the finishing department because they can do things really efficiently because of the way I package them to get them ready for the next step. And then it rolls down too with our outside customers, right? So if I'm pleasing my internal customers, chances are I'm also following everything I need to do quality-wise to please our external customers.
So, Raquel, we know that our industry is maturing. There's a lot of older workers who are aging out. A lot of tribal knowledge there. So, do most companies have a plan to develop their young leaders?
There's a couple of factors there. The first one is we all get excellent technical training in the spring industry, right? If you're going to run a machine, if you're going to make tools, whatever you're going to do, you probably get a fabulous basis of training. You probably have done some apprenticeship. You've probably been around the experts that have been doing it for 50 years and are the best in the world, right? But then you become a rock star at that, right? So you get promoted and now you're not going to make springs anymore. And as, say, the owner of the company, I don't want you to keep gravitating back to that thing that you were a rock star with. I want you to make people into rock stars. I want you to delegate the authority. I want you to see that people get training and let them expand and move up in the company. Because when you delegate, it lets you move up in the company. So we want to make sure that things are being passed on. And I think the second factor is that COVID changed a lot of young personalities from being what a lot of us can understand to being something that's harder to understand. How to communicate with this age level, how to make them productive, how to keep them engaged and not bored, how to make sure that phones aren't a problem in the workplace. So I think that that's where we need our supervisors, managers, directors, and executive team to become super good at managing this generation because, like it or not, they are going to populate our companies.
So, kind of begs a question of how can leaders improve their engagement with employees?
I think understanding how to lead, you probably have some natural inclinations if you're already in a leadership position, if you're in a management position. But now you have to learn how to delegate. Delegating takes practice. You have to practice the skill and try it over and over until it comes very naturally. You might have been promoted over your best buddy who you used to eat lunch with, and now you're in charge of telling him what to do. Sometimes it doesn't go over too well. So how do you learn how to develop a productive team with the guys that used to be your buddies? How do you keep things on a good trajectory? And so you have to learn how to develop good teams. You have to learn how to lead through change. So when new technology gets introduced, you have to have the practice at skills that teach you how to bring forward new technology so that people accept it, want it, use it.
So, Raquel, is there a difference between training for managers and supervisors?
Sure. We all get better at things as we go on, right? We layer it on. If I'm training a lead or a supervisor, I might teach them the same things that I'm teaching a manager, but the manager's going to understand it at a deeper level. So, for example, what I do with my enrollees that come to my leadership classes, I ask them to take the best idea they learned from class and to do an action plan. Now, typically, the action plan for a supervisor or a lead might be something that brings an ROI of, say, $20,000 a year to the company, or improves company morale, improves my ability to delegate by X%. Now, when I get to the manager level, I would expect an exponential increase on that. They should be telling me projects that are much more complicated and have a higher return on investment. When we get to the director and executive level, of course, that increases. So very often I'll see in the same class a supervisor who's giving me a project that brings in, say, $25,000 a year to the company. Whereas the manager has an idea that's going to net $100,000 to $200,000. And then at the highest level, the management is the directors and executive team should have things that are costing in the millions for ROI.
So looking at the future again of manufacturing professionals, those coming up through the ranks, those that we know they're coming, right? What are the critical skills that they should possess?
You know, when you get promoted up the ladder, you start and you're an employee, right? And when you're an employee, you can just throw out a great idea. I have a fabulous idea. Let's do this. And then you don't have to do the research to find out if it's feasible. You don't have to find out if it costs money. You don't have to find out if it's going to please customers. The next level of management has to do that. And identifying to somebody who's just become a supervisor the skills that they need to start identifying those financial responsibilities is really important. Having a mentor in the place of a mentor, having classes that teach you how to value things, whether it's valuing it through return on investment, reduced cost, saved time, managing time and people. So all of those things, it takes time to learn those skills. As a regular employee, you typically don't have the strategic planning skills that someone who's been doing it for a little while has. So you want to start developing your strategic planning skills a little bit at a time. And any time as a manager, you can bring someone into that conversation of strategic planning that will help them because they'll start to grasp the concept. How do you make a decision? What are the steps involved in making a decision? Who do you have to consult? Can't you just go forward with something because you have a great idea? Not always. What's your customer focus? So we talked about two kinds of customer focus already. We talked about the people in the next service, so like secondary services or grinding or heating, something like that. And then also the customer, the outside customer is a customer. And so how do you understand your responsibility to them in terms of quality? Understanding that focus and what's expected of you, it's pretty key. How do you develop a productive team? You know, there's some people who are just good at it. They say, come with me, and there's a line behind them because they're great. But other people have a little trouble with that. So we have to teach them how to develop a productive team. These things mostly aren't innate. You have to learn them. You watch other people do it who are good at it, and then you learn from them, you emulate them, and then hopefully you gain some skills. You learn how to negotiate. And negotiation, you might think, is that just for a purchasing department? No, it's for everybody. You're a new supervisor, and 4 people ask you for Friday off. Where's negotiation there, right? You're going to have to negotiate. It's going to be tricky. 2 of those guys are your buddies you used to work with and really rely on you to say yes. So how do you negotiate your way through a situation like that? It takes skills. It takes practice. It takes developing scripts for yourself so that you can practice what to say, how to deliver it, maybe you practice on your boss so that you get some practice in, they give you some feedback, and you start to get better at it.
So I'm just going to close with a bonus question. You made a presentation to our symposium at Spring World, and it was on women in manufacturing. But I think a lot of your message was mentoring. Why is that so important?
I do that workshop for many different industries. And the first one I did it for was executive women in agriculture. And when I got to the room, it was full, half of men and half of women, even though it was supposed to be targeted at women. The second thing I noticed was that a lot of the women in the room were over 50, and many were over 60, and some were over 70. And they were looking for mentors. So I think the takeaway for me was that we never stop looking for guidance. And if we really want to be good at what we do, if we want to get better at what we do, we're always going to seek guidance from someone smarter, better, faster than we are. But then you also have to pay it forward and mentor the people who are coming up. So I think it's kind of being mentored and mentoring side of the coin.
Wow, great ideas. I appreciate your time today. Tell us just your passion I can see for training and leadership development. So Raquel, how can people get a hold of you if they'd like to contact you?
Sure. My website is Crestcom Chicagoland. So CRESTCOM Chicagoland.com. And so it's very easy to access me that way. Or my first initial last name at Crestcom.com.
Raquel, thanks again. I appreciate your time, and we will hope that some folks will reach out to you and get some help.
In addition to Gibbs Interwire, the Springs Are Everywhere podcast has been made possible by the generous support of our silver sponsor, Automated Industrial Motion. You can learn more at aimcoil.com.
Thanks for joining us for the Springs Are Everywhere podcast. I want to thank our two guests today, Rodney Poore and Raquel Chole. You can learn more about SMI at smi.org. Be sure to subscribe, rate us, and like us on YouTube and on your favorite podcast platforms like Spotify and Apple Podcasts. I want to thank our platinum sponsor, Gibbs Interwire, and our silver sponsor, Automated Industrial Motion, for making this program possible.
Here's a final thought. Did you know that a power spring is a type of mechanical spring that stores and releases energy? It's typically made of a strip of metal wound into a spiral shape, similar to a coil spring, but with a flat or ribbon-like profile. Power springs are often used in applications where a compact, efficient energy storage solution is needed, such as in retractable cords, clock mechanisms, and various types of machinery. Remember, springs are everywhere and maybe even closer than you thought.